Welcome to this episode of the Leading in Dentistry podcast. I'm Dr. Wes Eggett. After spending the last 20 years in a variety of leadership positions, and as a student of leadership myself, I started Leading in Dentistry to share what I found and to continue learning with you. If anything from this episode stands out, check out the show notes, our online courses, or one-on-one coaching on leadingindentistry.com. Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Leading in Dentistry podcast. I'm Dr. Wes Eggett. For those of you new to the podcast, I am a practicing associate dentist just outside of Denver, Colorado, and I started Leading in Dentistry to help develop the leadership skills of each team member in the dental office, not just the business owner. And I started this podcast specifically while I'm not an owner of any dental practice, as I really want to get across the message that you don't need to wait until you're in charge to be a leader. This episode of the podcast is a special one, in that it's the first time we've had a repeat guest on the podcast, and I couldn't be happier that it's Dr. Richard Lowe. If you went back and listened to the first episode where Richard was on the podcast, you'll know that he started a podcast about 10 years ago, and he started it in his closet, and it developed into a massive company, and he went on this huge journey where he eventually started feeling very burned out, and now that's what he does. He helps people in the dental profession that are struggling with burnout and the feeling of overwhelm and how to get through that, how to work through that. So in this episode, we have a great discussion about burnout, where it comes from, and what are some of the things that you can do to solve it. And while it is geared more towards the dentists out there, the feelings of burnout are universal in dentistry, and anyone who listens to this episode will absolutely benefit from some of the nuggets of wisdom that Richard has to share with us. If anything in this episode resonates and you need someone to talk to about your feelings of burnout, you can always reach out to me or check out the show notes, and you can find the resources and links to get in touch with Richard and get involved with his program and his Facebook group for helping people struggle through that feeling of burnout in dentistry. And with that in mind, let's get to the episode. All right, welcome back to another episode of the Leading in Dentistry podcast. I'm Dr. Wes Eggett, and once again, we are joined today by the one, the only Richard Lowe. Richard, welcome back to the podcast.
Thanks for having me, man. And thanks for, especially after giving you such a hard time last time about your cover art. You took immediate action. And I was like, I don't understand your cover art. We got to get your logo on there and people can see it and recognize it. And you're like, boom, okay, let's get it done. And I made fun of you. And so the fact that you'd even have me back on is, I'm really grateful for that, and that you forgave me.
Yeah, of course. I just decided to be the bigger person, you know. No, honestly, that was so helpful. And, your history in podcasting and your experience, anything that you say obviously goes a long way. And I know that's part of what we're going to talk about today, is the type of influence that over the years that you've been able to have on the dental community has led to you where you currently are in your journey. And so wanted to chat a little bit today about some of the stuff that I know you've been posting about recently on social media and some of the recent projects that you've been working on, because I feel like it's very applicable to leaders everywhere. And I know that you're taking a particular set of actions along with that, but it's also been something that's been really cool to see following your journey over the course of like the last decade. So one of the things you've been talking a lot about lately is your personal story and the journey you've been on with what you've been through with your career. So I just wanted to kind of open it up, just, have this be a forum to talk about leadership in general and what you've been through and where you are and where you're taking that in the future.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny having started a podcast when I was fresh out of dental school, 2016. The very first season of Shared Practices was, should I own a dental practice? Is practice ownership right for me? And then we went on for many seasons and for a long time to talk all about practice ownership and growing, lots of numbers, lots of like potential and possibility and growing practices. But I'm really grateful that I had the foresight to put in season one and not assume that practice ownership is right for everyone, because it's not, and it is hard, and there are trade-offs and there are costs. The burden of ownership is real, as well as like the burden of comparison, of like feeling like I should be a practice owner, or if practice ownership doesn't go as well as you hoped it would, you feel like less than. You feel like, oh, I'm behind now compared to all my colleagues who are in thriving practices, or, I'm made a mistake and I'm embarrassed, I'm ashamed to talk about it. And that has proved to be true. I was worried that like we would overemphasize, we'd oversell practice ownership, and then people would feel like this is what I have to do, and they wouldn't self-reflect, which sometimes it's impossible until you get into it and decide, is this really what I want? Like, do I even want to be a practice owner? Does my skill sets align with the demands of leadership and practice ownership? And if not, it's a huge toll. And just recently, I opened up and shared, I think it was Sunny in Dental Investment Group. He posted that there wasn't a forum as much for dentists to talk about their struggles, about their mental health struggles, about anxiety, about depression. And I was like, you know what? Let's start this. And so just this last week, I started a Facebook group called Next Level Dentist Rising Beyond Burnout. Because I really honestly in my heart of hearts, like believe that the next level, once you're a dentist, once you've like figured out your clinical journey, once you've decided on practice ownership or not, you can get trapped in this thought of like the next CE course is going to make me happy. The next procedure I master is going to unlock everything. When my practice reaches a certain point, or when I open a second practice, or when we bring on a second doctor, then I'll be happy. Then things will be awesome. And the reality is, I really think everyone in dentistry deserves to be happy right now. They deserve to find a life that, while it might not be balanced because there's different seasons, that they can enjoy aspects of what they're doing and have the tools to cope with the stressors and not have the mounting stress of dentistry crush them. Like the next level is not to do another course or open another office. It's to build a life that you really love, that fulfills you and serves you. And we've been programmed to like invest all of our identity in being a dentist, and we have to like deprogram and step back and decide, what are all the other things I care about? So the first thing I want to do is invite anyone who is a dentist who feels some sort of challenge or struggle or has in the past and can support other dentists or things aren't perfect. Next Level Dentist Rising Beyond Burnout. Join the Facebook group. I want it to be a positive place. Hopefully not too much negativity. There's this balance between vulnerability and sharing, but also just like despairing. And so we're going to see if we can strike that balance and find it, create like a really supportive, safe, positive environment for people to be open and vulnerable. So
yeah. And so I've been a part of the Facebook group. I think it's only been a week, right? About a week. And I've seen that balance and the positivity with not the negativity, but I guess the vulnerability, right? Where the vulnerability comes with someone using the Facebook anonymous feature appropriately and opening up about their struggles, and the positivity has come through the comments of people who have been there and the support around that. And one of the things that during COVID especially, we were doing a lot of studies on burnout, or I was doing a lot of research on studies about burnout. I was not conducting the studies myself. And I was in the Army at the time, which I know you have experience there. Yeah. And being in the military there, especially at the clinic that I was at, we noticed how lonely everyone was.
Yeah.
And where I was, there was only one person who was in charge of the clinic, and there was only one person who was the enlisted soldier in charge of the clinic, and there was only one person who was the command, like every single position. It was such a small clinic that you were the only person in your stage of life or at your rank, or you didn't have anybody to share that experience with. And what we found in researching like about burnout and trying to figure out how do we solve this idea of burnout, which everyone felt during COVID, is it actually came from someone in the Air Force, and their study was all about loneliness and how burnout is not necessarily a symptom of overworking, but it's a symptom of working and feeling like it's only you, feeling like you're lonely, like it's you against the world. Like how many times in a dental office, I mean, we're going through this in our office right now, chatting about our culture, and hearing everyone say in these one-on-one interviews, I feel like I'm the only one who blank, I'm the only one who's watching the schedule. I'm the only one who's turning over the rooms. When that's not really the case, and if people chatted with each other, they'd recognize that a lot more people are in their same situation than they know. And that applies to, as I'm talking about in the clinic with our floaters, sterilization techs, assistants, hygienists, everybody feels that way. But if you all knew that each other felt that way, wow, wouldn't that be something? And so, as far as dentists goes, understanding that everybody else has gone through the same thing, and everybody else has at least passed through some period where they've gained some experience there and can share some thoughts in that. So being able to open up and talk about that feeling of the burnout and the loneliness and thinking that it's just you, I think that's awesome, having a forum to discuss that. Because clearly, when you first started, I was curious, like, how's this gonna take? How are people gonna take it? I'm sure you're thinking the same thing when you start something new, right? And it, like, seeing the posts come up over the course of the last week, people are genuinely opening up and other people are genuinely giving feedback. So it's been awesome to see. So way to go.
Well, thanks. And what you said is exactly right. I mean, my wife, Christine, turned to me 4 years ago. We were driving to Costco. I remember exactly where we were, exactly the stop sign. And she turned to me and she's like, "You don't really have any friends in Indiana." And I wasn't even mad. I was like, you know what, you're right. And there's something weird about when you're a clinician and you're a practice owner, you're a dentist, that is isolating. And I don't think it's unique, like you just said, unique to being a dentist, but there's not an immediate peer group that you can relate to. When you're the leader in your practice, no one else has to take the burden of ownership and being the boss, being the dentist. You then go to like your church group or, your family friends, and you've got problems that a lot of people can't relate to. And they're like, what do you have to complain about? You're a rich dentist you own a dental practice. Your life is amazing. I wish I had your life. And what they don't know is all of the stressors and pressures of clinical dentistry practice ownership, the real risk, the real ups and downs, the ugly version of it behind the scenes. And what you said is exactly right. The isolation that sometimes we self-impose, and even some people have posted that they've found a lot of friendships with other entrepreneurs in their local community, because at least they can relate on that entrepreneurship, being the boss, taking the risks, investing. But one of the rules in this group is I'm still trying to figure out how to set the rules, how to administrate this, and how to keep it under control. But real quick, I realized I don't want people to put on their like mentor teaching hat. If someone posts that they're struggling and their story and their vulnerabilities, what they're going through, if they're asking for specific advice, sure, give that specific advice. Don't start offering advices on a bunch of different areas, but start with a story or an example of where you can relate to them and you went through something similar. And even right off the bat, there was a dental student or a new grad who posted who's got a board complaint and is just freaking out because it's like, am I going to lose my license right off the bat? How's this going to go? Documentation, lawyers, it's super scary. I'm being sued right now by a patient. I've had board complaints. A lot of the times it's over money. Patients want a refund and they're bitter and they come after you. And there was a bunch of examples of people who are like, you know what? The board is here for a reason, and they, much, much worse things happen. Patients die. Like, there is true neglect and negligence and malpractice, and there has to be a forum to protect patients. But also, it's the practice of dentistry, the practice of medicine. Patients die all the time. And sometimes it's like, as you're learning as a resident, as a new doctor, and that's a big burden to bear. But the boards of dentistry and medicine understand the difference between gross negligence and ill intent, and just crap happens. Life is messy. There's a learning curve, all of that. And so that person, even just having that perspective of like, you can go find a lot of states, you can go find the board meeting notes and you can go read how the proceedings go and examples of what happens. And having access to all these resources has been really cool for the dentists in this group. The other thing that's been crazy is it came up so often. As I've been having anxiety and panic attacks for the first time in my life in the last year and a half, which is new. It's not like I haven't seen, a lot of people are like, okay, you need to go get diagnosed. I've been seeing counselors and people since I was like 14. I've been diagnosed with different things, taken medications for different things. I've worked with life coaches and therapists on very specific issues, addiction recovery people. I've gotten a lot of help and support over the course of my life. And a lot of people mentioned like fitness and religion and other support things that weren't counseling, that weren't medication. And I really think people should look at this comprehensively of like, what are all the tools at my disposal? And over the last year and a half, I found a men's group, not dentists, ironically, but they were all like fathers or trying to be better fathers and husbands. And we were all focused on a kind of ridiculous goal of getting shredded, like getting a six pack. Um, and it was a bait and switch, like come in for the abs, come in for the fitness journey. I've never been strong. I've been a soft nerd my entire life. That's who my wife married. That's what she signed up for, and she never complained. Um, but I've been in the gym for the first time in my life. I've been like developing muscle for the first time. I've lost 60 pounds of fat. And I didn't expect that fitness journey to impact how I show up in all the other areas of my life, in my marriage, in a dental practice setting, in a business setting. And there's actually this weird freedom in realizing, like developing a daily routine and discipline that you are committed to sticking to no matter what. And for me, one of the powers, we were just talking about this in the group yesterday, because now I have a men's group of dentists that we're doing a very similar thing. We've lost 450 pounds since November collectively with these 30 dentists. But it was like, you know what? If I lose everything, I'm going to wake up and I'm going to run the play. I'm going to do my same routine. I'm going to do anything it takes to provide for my family. I'm going to work on myself. I'm going to self-confront. If I retire, if I have all the money in the world and I don't need to work anymore, I'm going to wake up and I'm going to run the play. I'm going to do the same inputs on my day, and I'm going to serve people, and I'm going to take care of my family. And when you find a routine like that really sources you and helps you take care of yourself, but you also find that like consistency and that discipline, it starts to bulletproof you against just the chaos and the stress, and the ups and downs. Because it's like, you know what? I can do it anxious. I can do it depressed. I can still show up for myself and my family in a way that I'm proud of. So that's been some of my recent arc. I just spoke for 20 minutes straight. So I'm sorry, Wes.
No,
What
great.
are your thoughts as you hear all that?
No, that's excellent. What it reminds me of is, the idea of extreme ownership, the idea of taking it upon yourself. And there's this dichotomy where I feel like a lot of times people talk about extreme ownership and Jocko Willink's idea of, it's all on you. And that's been widely said as a positive thing where you have control, but oftentimes it morphs into the feeling that dentists get. That is, it's all on me, and the pressure and the weight of that, as opposed to when you understand that it's within your control, that you can do something about it. So regardless of what happens, you're going to run the play. You're going to wake up and you're going to do it the right way because you know that that's the way it's going to work, and it allows you to take control over that again. And I know that there's a lot that I don't know about, but a lot about, struggling with having control over things, and that leads to a lot of stress. So I can't really speak to that. But it reminds me of something that my dad said when I was in high school. So I wrestled in high school, and I was terrible,
Okay.
by the way. When I was in high school, we were opened up a new high school. So when there were freshmen, there were only freshmen. And then when I was a sophomore, there were sophomore and freshmen. I was the oldest the whole time, so we were terrible at every sport because there was no one to beat up on us. But one of the things that we talked about was in high school wrestling, apparently at the time, maybe it's still this way, I don't know. If you went into triple overtime, the ref would just pick who won. He'd just say, who had the better effort, you win. And what my dad emphasized to us was don't leave it up to the ref. Don't let the ref get to pick who wins. And so in life, very similar idea is that if you leave it up to the world around you or your circumstances to decide how your day is going to go or how you're going to attack, the challenges that you're up against, then you're setting yourself up for losing that control. And again, I know that there's something about control where if we just have wanting to control everything, that's unhealthy as well. But there's something to be said for taking that ownership over your own experiences that I think is really important.
Yeah.
Go for it.
Well, I was going to say, I was just thinking about extreme ownership the other day. We went on a couples retreat this last summer with, there's this counselor. Her name is Dr. Jennifer Finlayson Fife.
Oh
And
yeah, I'm
she helps a
familiar.
lot of, yeah, you know who that is?
Yeah.
Yeah. She helps a lot of women break out of like a fairly puritanical, I'm saying that word wrong, but like a fairly conservative background and approach to sexuality and intimacy and marriage that has them like trapped in this weird headspace that doesn't allow them to enjoy that part of their life. And so that's like her expertise. And we went on this couples retreat and a bunch of other stuff. She's amazing. But she talked about owning what you can own in your partnership, in your marriage, and owning 0% of the things that you can't own, which is like a nuance to extreme ownership. And for me, recently, I've been realizing how much I'm attached to how my wife responds to my efforts. So if I'm like cleaning around the house more, doing more laundry, if I'm helping more, if I'm planning more with the kids and planning dates and paying more attention, I want her to recognize that, and I want her to notice, and I want her to respond favorably to all of that. If I'm trying to help with my kids and they react in ways that like they're very unappreciative, I realize I'm attached to their reaction to what I do, and I'm trying to unattach from that of like, I'm going to own what I can control. And if my kids act like spoiled brats and, I'm still going to teach them and discipline them and all that. But I
Hmm.
mean, they react in the moment in a way that's not what I want to. Can I still pour into them and love them and be patient and not match their reactivity? If my wife doesn't acknowledge my efforts, am I going to throw myself a pity party like a teenager of like, they're not noticing me and what I'm doing around here? So I feel like there's levels of this, and it's funny to discover in myself through journaling and self-reflection and watching myself the areas that I still like. I'm looking for external validation. I'm looking
Mm-hmm.
for maybe controlling the responses of those around me. I want everyone to respond in a certain way, so I'm acting in a certain way to get that response, and realizing like that's a little unhealthy too. So this is the kind of stuff that so this group that I started, there's Next Level Dentist, which is the Facebook group. There's Next Level Fathers, which is these dentists who are men. They don't have to be fathers. And unfortunately, right now, we don't have a women's group. But someday, like, reach out, maybe get on the wait list if this is interesting to you. We're working on our physical fitness. We run this daily accountability around fitness, nutrition, journaling, scripture study, and then service of like serving someone in your family, someone in your practice. And we have a point system, and we hold each other accountable every single day. It's been really, really amazing. Like it's turned into this powerful group of friendship. When someone disappears, just today on the call, someone had disappeared earlier this week, and on the call, multiple people had texted that person yesterday and had said, "Hey, are you okay? Is there anything we can do?" And that was like he could tell that people really cared about him. And not everyone has that on a daily basis where people are reaching out to them and supporting them if they've disappeared, if they're struggling. So it's just been a lot of fun to create that for other dentists and for each other, so that we don't have to be so isolated. We don't have to be so alone. We can support each other. So I loved that you brought up extreme ownership because I've been thinking about that.
Yeah, yeah. I think it ties into a lot of what sometimes can solve our problems and sometimes to what can create them too. One of the things we talked about this week with our team as we're going through some of these discussions on culture is the five dysfunctions of a team.
Hmm.
If you're familiar with that, with Patrick Lencioni. And
Yep.
he talks about the pyramid, and the foundation for the pyramid is trust, which allows you to have good conflict. And when you have good conflict, you can commit to things. And when you commit to things, you can hold each other accountable. And when you hold each other accountable, then you can get good results. And I feel like oftentimes what happens with dentists is we flip the pyramid upside down and we start with results. That's the most important thing, is getting the results. But if we don't get the results, we start holding people accountable because we didn't get out of them what we wanted. And then when we don't have that, we start questioning people's commitment. And then we start having conflict, and it erodes all the trust at the bottom of the pyramid. And you were talking about the idea of kind of seeking validation. I know that was, I think the first post that you put up in the group was about that idea of, am I seeking validation in in my actions, and is that causing me to feel burnt out? Is that causing me to feel like I'm on stage all the time? And I think we talked about this last time, but I heard someone say that there are two types of relationships. There's relationships based off of trust and relationships based off of validation. So a relationship off of trust is like the friend you haven't seen since high school. Doesn't matter. You go grab dinner and it's like no time has passed. Or the relationship off of validation, which is, family members saying, we never see you anymore. And, so they're always striving to get like that extra, empty bucket filled. And if you can learn to start with that trust in yourself and get to those commitment levels and get the results from that, I think that's huge. But sometimes giving dentists that thing to focus on of just the results, right? So you just started talking about physical fitness. In our church group, we were doing an exercise where we wrote down all the things that would make us good fathers, right? That would make us feel validated. And we wrote arrows against them or up against them. So if we're doing well, like a peak of our life, it was a straight up arrow. If it was I'm progressing, it was like 45 degrees. If it was I'm stagnant, it was horizontal. 45 degrees down if I'm like declining, and then like I'm in a pit was arrow going down. And I realized that all of my arrows that were going up were my career arrows, and then the arrows that were representing my health and my well-being were all going down. And it made it very, very visual, where as if they were levers, where I'm cranking this one up and this one has an effect on the others. And trying to strike that balance is difficult, especially depending on the different stages of your career. And so you've been through a couple of different stages and phases. And for you, I'm curious, is it right to try to seek that balance in the micro, like every single day? Or is it appropriate to do it in the macro, where you say, this is a phase where I'm doing this, and then I'm going to dedicate to this. But you also don't want to always be putting off the phase where you're focusing on the balance. So I'm curious what your thoughts are related to that and how that ties into some of the stuff you do with your group.
Yeah, so I think as we progress, like unfortunately, sometimes there's this like almost direct correlation. The more success and money someone makes, especially at first, almost the more unhappy they are because everything is getting unbalanced. And I have found that we tend to start coping with stress in unhealthy ways. At least I have. And so it's like the stress of what's required to get success and a certain output over here. I'm staying up late. I'm on my phone too much. I'm playing video games. I'm neglecting my family. And then there's also people who reach a certain point and they kind of calm down. They're like, things are good enough. So I feel like there's people who are really starting to suffer. There's people who are really getting comfortable. And both of those things can lead to your health, your well-being, all of those things getting out of balance. And what I've seen is there will never be time. There will never be time for your health, for balance. You have to create time. And so for me, I used to stay up late. Like I used to be up till, I'm a night owl. I'd be up till midnight, 1 a.m. Once the kids are in bed, it's like my time. Finally, I get my time. All the things are done. And now I've shifted that selfish time to the morning. I wake up at, 4:15, 5 a.m., depending on the day. And I get my workout in. I get my journaling, my scripture study in. And for me, it's very input based. I used to have more output goals. But a lot of times we don't control the outputs. Guys will join my group and they're like, okay, I want to lose 50 pounds by Christmas. I'm like, actually, I don't care what your goals are. I care about, let's focus on the inputs every single day, no matter the circumstances. You're on a 10-day hunt, you're still going to hit your exercise and your macros, which guys have done. It's your anniversary, you're on a vacation, you're at CE. And we actually have turned this into a game of, can I show up for myself, for my family, for the other people in this group, no matter the circumstances, no matter how hard and bad and difficult life gets? And the answer actually is like, yes, you can have both. You can have progress in multiple areas and not let the success in one area kind of lead to an inevitable decline in other areas. But it takes a ton of intentionality, a ton of your mental bandwidth to say, I am not going to make these sacrifices. And eventually you might realize, maybe I do need to cut back a day a week, or maybe I do need to make a shift. Maybe I do need to change how my goals with practice ownership or my timelines so that I'm not continually putting off for the future. I mean, I think about being a parent of kids aged 4 to 14. That's like the golden window that you never get back, where they kind of still want to be around you. You can do lots of fun things. Um, you can always make more money later in your career. As dentists, we always have lots of options, and there's phases and there's seasons. But man, my challenge is that it is more possible than people think to have progress in all the areas when you control the inputs and you let go of your attachment to the outputs, to the timelines. And that's, I don't know, that's what I've been focusing on recently, and that's what I found. And then also there is breakdown moments. There is times where it's not perfect, and having the tools to cope with those and bounce back from those is just as important.
I wanted to ask you about, speaking of breakdown moments. If I know one thing about you, Richard, it's that you're tactical. And, and so far, our discussion today has been very, I mean, these are like philosophical ideas that help give you hope and give you kind of a North Star to work towards. Knowing your tactical approach to, what we've talked about, two questions, or I guess two parts to this question. One, what can you say to people out there who are in that phase of burnout, when they're feeling perhaps that they're in the pit of their despair? I don't know why someone in that situation would come and listen to my podcast at this time, but if they are out there, what would you say to that person who's in that phase of extreme burnout? And then second question is, what are the tactical things? Obviously, joining the Facebook group and working with Next Level Fathers gets into the deep dive of those things. But what are some of the tactical things you can recommend for just the next step? Maybe not getting out of the pit of despair, but what are the next couple steps to take for someone to just put them in the right direction?
Yeah, so two things in particular, especially having been at that point multiple times in my life. Number one is, and Georgia and I talked about this recently on the podcast on shared practices, actually writing out, like, what is the worst case scenario? Like, what happens if everything goes to crap? Like, I lose my dental practice, or all of my team quits, or like even worse things, like my spouse leaves me, or, you get injured. And having a plan for, especially professionally, if you've got a professional plan of, if I went bankrupt, what would I do? It actually gives you perspective, because a lot of times there's this panic in like the unknown, in what ifs. And when you actually have a plan and you're like, okay, if I lose everything, I still have a dental license. If I lose my dental license, I'll figure something else out. I have these talents, I have these skills. But I think there is a healthy, like, what am I worried about right now? And what happens if it doesn't go the way that I want it to go? And follow that down the line. And that goes along with my second point, which is get perspective. A lot of times, a lot of our suffering and despair comes from not making a decision or not having a conversation with someone. So there's something we're avoiding, and it feels so painful to have this discussion, to make this decision around our practice, around a key team member. Sometimes that's holding a crucial conversation. Sometimes that's firing someone, letting them go, that they'll have success somewhere else. It's having a conversation with the spouse that is going to be hard, and they might not agree with you, and it might lead to more conflict, but it's what has to be done to tell the truth of your experience, to recover and to heal. Getting perspective is really hard to do when we're in it. Having people that we trust that have walked similar journeys or can relate deeply is one of the fastest ways to get perspective, because we can get out of our head. We can get into the frame of mind of someone who cares about us and wants what's best for us, maybe has been there before, and can help us see what we don't see. So I don't know. Those still might have been a little bit too philosophical, but that's what I've got for you today.
No, I think that's spot on. It kind of brings us back to where we started talking about community and burnout. And one of the things that leads to burnout is that loneliness. And if you recognize that you're not alone in it. I mean, I remember the first time that I ever accidentally pulped a tooth. And I was in dental school. I was working on Skid Row when I was in dental school, as part of one of our rotations. And I remember it was just supposed to be a simple occlusal. And at that point, I've been doing fillings for, a couple of months, thinking I'm hot stuff, and thinking, you drill on the hard stuff until it becomes soft, and then you're done. And then, so, thinking I get to dentin. didn't know this person had worn through all their enamel. And so I'm just thinking, I'm just going to go until it gets soft. Well, it got super soft because I went straight into the pole. And I remember feeling absolutely devastated, like looking for something online that was going to help me know that it's okay. I remember looking on Student Doctor Network, like everything that I could find. And then someone had posted about one doctor who pulled them aside and said, welcome, welcome to the profession. This is what it is sometimes. Yeah. And just feeling like how much work I had to go to find someone who had been through something similar. And so I just want to say, I think what you're doing is awesome, and giving people an opportunity to not have to, if you're already in the pit of despair, and you look for any kind of help, to make it as easy as possible to find someone who's been through what you're going through, and to make it as easy as possible to access some resource or some better perspective. Because when you're in there, you can't find it by yourself. You got to have somebody else to kind of pull you up. And so I think what you're doing is awesome, and it's great to be able to give people that forum. So kudos to you. And we're reaching, I guess, the end of our time here, but I just wanted to say again, thank you for a great conversation. And is there anything else with parting words that you want to say before we wrap up today?
No, thank you, Wes, for having me back on. Yeah, I would say join the group, Next Level Dentist. Reach out to me on Instagram, dr.richard.low, or go to nextlevelfathers.com. The website still kind of sucks, but I think you can book an appointment there. And I'll be putting out some YouTube videos and some podcast stuff to describe what we're doing. But I'd love for people, even if they're just suffering and they need someone to talk to reach out to me. I'm here. I've been through probably what you're going through, or something similar, or something worse, or something related, or I know someone who can help you and can relate to you. So please, 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 if you're suffering, reach out.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Richard, and come back again soon, all right?
Will do.
All right.
Take care, Wes.
And that's it for this episode of the Leading in Dentistry podcast. If you learned something today, please leave a 5-star review and share the episode with a friend. If you're ready to take the next step for yourself or provide leadership training for a team member, visit leadingindentistry.com to check out our online courses and one-on-one coaching.